นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ So tonight we've come together to celebrate Visakha. The full moon comes in May every year, though on different days obviously, according to the lunar cycle. When we recollect the birth, enlightenment, parinibbana of the Buddha. It's a good time to think about who is the Buddha and what is a Buddha. Buddha, the word Buddha, they often translate as the awakened one, or sometimes the enlightened one. What does that mean? It's referring to the mind of a human being that's awakened to truth, the truth of the way things are, or what we call Dhamma. So the Buddha used to say regularly, one who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. One who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. Or one time there was a Brahmin, a religious practitioner, not a disciple of the Buddha, but interested, having heard that the Buddha had come to the area he was living in. He was interested to meet the Buddha. Even before the Buddha became the Buddha, already people had an idea of a Buddha. They already had the word in their language, a fully enlightened being. But obviously, Gautama the Buddha, who started this teaching that we're practicing, we say is the supremely enlightened, self-enlightened Buddha. But the people of India in those days were always looking for an enlightened teacher. They had great faith. So this Brahmin came to meet the Buddha, and he asked him, what makes you a Buddha, or what is a Buddha? So the Buddha answered, I know what has to be known, and I've abandoned what has to be abandoned. I've cultivated what's to be cultivated. So that's one definition of the Buddha from his own words. Buddha is one who knows. And the root of this word, Buddha, means the knowing, and the awakened mind, the mind that has knowing, the quality of knowing. But it's known what should be known. It's not just knowing anything. We all know certain things, some things, but knowing particularly the way to liberate the mind from suffering, stress, unhappiness. And later when he was teaching, the Buddha would talk about the Four Noble Truths of what the Buddha has penetrated, understood, known. So training his mind, he's come to know the Four Noble Truths. So this is what, as students of the Buddha, we're following in that same pathway. Coming to know, to realize the Four Noble Truths, meaning to know dukkha, suffering, and to comprehend it. The correct duty towards the first noble truth of dukkha is to comprehend it, know it fully for oneself. Know dukkha as dukkha. As the Buddha said, many people in the world don't realize they're suffering even. They haven't yet comprehended what is dukkha. The Buddha has comprehended dukkha. He's also understood what is the cause of dukkha, second noble truth, which is craving, based on ignorance. And the correct duty towards the second noble truth is to abandon it, abandon craving. So the Buddha has done that, he's abandoned what should be abandoned, he's abandoned craving. The third noble truth is nirodha, cessation of suffering. This is to be realized, and the Buddha has realized it, the end of suffering. And that's what made him a Buddha. That's what he teaches. The fourth noble truth is the path leading to the cessation of dukkha, or suffering. So it's the practice. It's what we're doing here right now, practicing the path. Cultivating dana, sila, samadhi, panya, or the Eightfold Noble Path. And the Buddha has cultivated that. He's cultivated what needs to be cultivated. So this is what makes a Buddha, and then this is what he teaches back to the world, gives back. So this is, we say, our good fortune, our merit, our good karma, to be born at a time where these teachings are still here in the world. They haven't been lost. They've been preserved through practice, particularly the practice of the Sangha, but also the laity like yourselves, because the Sangha couldn't survive without the support of the lay community. And lay community also practice. So we've got this good fortune, we're born in a time when the Buddhist teachings are still here for us to hear and learn and then study and practice, put into practice in our daily lives. And particularly on occasions like this, we come together for a night to practice just as the Buddha practiced on the night of his enlightenment, cultivating sila, samadhi, panya, putting effort into keeping the precepts, practicing mindfulness, calming the minds, developing the concentration of samadhi, and then contemplating, developing wisdom. And the reason sometimes we do it for long periods, let's say like for a whole night, is because we haven't done it enough in the past. We've practiced sometimes, but we've also had plenty of times where we haven't done much practice, no practice, or even done the opposite of the practice and gone in the wrong direction and created more suffering for ourselves. So sometimes it's appropriate to put more effort into cultivating the path. Sometimes we practice all day, sitting, walking, meditation, keeping the precepts. Sometimes we practice all night, meditating, keeping the precepts, listening to Dhamma. This is exactly how the Buddha practiced, all the disciples, enlightened disciples of the Buddha practiced. So what are we doing? We're cultivating the path. So we're cultivating sila. We translate sila as virtue, meaning we're learning to develop wholesome, skillful conduct. Our actions, our speech, training them, and training the mind, which obviously guides our actions, our speech, in wholesome conduct. So we're learning not to harm others through our speech, our actions, not to harm ourselves. This is the foundation of our practice. It's an unavoidable practice, or something that you can't sidestep, avoid, dismiss. It's something we have to learn to see the value of. And this is the beginning of the path, learning to follow precepts, 5 precepts, 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 227 precepts, using them as a vehicle, a tool to develop mindfulness and to prevent ourselves creating karma, bad karma, and the results of that. Already when we start to commit to keep the precepts, we're cultivating what should be cultivated, and we're abandoning what should be abandoned. To keep the precepts, we need to be mindful of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, our reactions, the situations we find ourselves in, because life is very unpredictable. It brings us challenges and obstacles. Actually, we did it all to ourselves. All the different obstacles, challenges we face, we've created them through our own karma in the past. But because we can't remember everything we've said and done, it's too complex. So things seem to manifest or pop up out of nowhere sometimes. So our lives have this kind of unevenness. Sometimes things seem very smooth and easy. Sometimes we drop into a big hole. Sometimes it seems like we're walking up a steep hill, up and down, up and down. But the Buddha said we have to learn to walk evenly along an uneven path. Because we've made karma in our lives, not everything that comes back to us is to our liking. Sometimes we have unpleasant experiences, like we chant. Separation from what we love and like is part of life. Association with what we don't like is part of life. Not attaining our wishes is part of life. And this is the unevenness of the path of life that we're leading, going along. We don't always get what we want, when we want, how we want. But the Buddhist path is teaching us to look more closely. So where can we find some way of dealing with this fact? Or learning to cultivate mindfulness, awareness, wisdom. We begin with mindfulness of our precepts. Sometimes we have obstacles arise, the tendency is to maybe follow our more negative emotional reactions, which leads us to break the precepts. So So sometimes we have desire, ambition, especially these days, the way the world is. It's a consumer society we live in. Our culture, the way people think now is very much we have to always consume more to be happy, to get more material things, have more pleasurable experiences through our senses. So we have a lot of desires, ambitions to deal with as human beings. And often it leads us to be frustrated or sometimes to do the wrong thing. It leads us to harm ourselves, harm others. This leads on to more karma, or what we call Visakha karma, resultant karma, comes back to us as human beings. So sometimes we find we're not experiencing the pleasures that we would like, the happiness that we seek. Things don't always go our way. When things don't go our way, sometimes we express that by when we get discontent, irritated or angry in life, we express that and make more karma through our speech, our actions, and then that will come back to us. So for one who hasn't understood this point, they're always creating more bumps on the road, actually contributing to the unevenness of the road as they make more karma, and particularly not following the precepts. So the Buddha encouraged us to look carefully at our lives, look at this point, understand it, and then determine to try and use the precepts as a guideline. Learn to live in a virtuous way, where we're not harming others or ourselves through our actions, our speech. So to keep the precepts, we're already training in cultivating what needs to be cultivated, abandoning what needs to be abandoned, and developing this quality of knowing ourselves, knowing this body, this mind, really knowing who we are. Sometimes Ajahn, our teacher, would ask people, do you really know who you are yet? Do you know yourself? Because much of the time we're living in a kind of dream world, fantasy world of our imagination and our creation. And we go about our business imagining all kinds of things about ourselves, about others. And we live in a kind of a world of labels and concepts based on our moods, our opinions. And part of this is because we haven't yet cultivated mindfulness and wisdom. Ajahn Chah encouraged us to practice meditation, keep the precepts and then learn to meditate in order to look more closely at this, to get to really know, what is this person I call myself? The Buddha encouraged us to do that. He said, what you take as a self, we can divide up into the 5 khandhas, the upadana khandhas, what we call the aggregates of clinging. This sense of self, the perception of self, the idea of self, the imagination of self, centers around these 5 groups of experience as a human being. Our form, physical form, feelings of pleasure, pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, neutral. Memories, perceptions, what we call mental formations, thought formations, the preoccupations of the mind, or you might just say thinking, and then sense consciousness, that ability to know through our senses, knowing through our eyes, ears, tongue, nose, touch, and the mind itself. These are what we call the 5 aggregates of clinging, the upadana khandha. And this is where human beings learn to attach through not seeing the truth that these things are impermanent, they're dukkha, and there's no abiding, lasting self in these things. Human beings don't see that, so we grasp at these 5 khandhas as self. So what did the Buddha know? Well, he knew that these 5 khandhas are not self. They're impermanent, meaning they're changing. What's changing is unable to bring you lasting happiness, so they're unsatisfactory. And they're not self. There's no lasting self in what is constantly changing, subject to conditioning, causes and conditions. So on the night of his enlightenment, what was the Buddha looking at? He was looking at these 5 khandhas. He come to that point in his practice. He'd already been practicing for 6 years, but hadn't found the true path, true realization yet. But he had a sense of what was the right path, and that was to develop calm and peace through meditation, calm the mind, develop mindfulness, and then to look and develop insight into his own khandhas, into his own body and mind. He'd already come to the conclusion that the tendency of humans to either indulge in sense pleasures, to get too lax in life, too undisciplined and too attached to comfort and sense pleasure, what we call kama sukhalikana yoga. He'd already seen that way isn't going to bring one to realization, understanding. And he'd also practiced very tough practice for 6 years with the other 5 ascetics. Atta kilomatana yoga, practice that's too tight, too tough, just leads to pain in body, pain in mind, and no realization. He'd seen these 2 ways are not the way for humans to liberate themselves. He came to the conclusion that the development of mindfulness, awareness, and then contemplation of truth is the way to liberate the heart from delusion. So on the night of his enlightenment, that's what he was doing. He's contemplating his own body, his own mind, the nature of it. Perhaps he was asking questions as he contemplated. Say, as he would later teach others in different suttas, they ask questions. Is this body permanent or impermanent? Are the feelings I experience, pleasure and then pain, are they permanent or impermanent? Memories, thought formations, are they permanent or impermanent? Going on like that, reflecting on where craving and attachment arises and seeing through it, seeing the, you might say, pointlessness or fruitless way of just constantly clinging to things that are changing, that we can't own, we can't keep, we can't control. Another way he was looking at the khandhas, he said the khandhas are like something that's on fire, but we just haven't seen they're on fire yet. We don't realize we're burning. So we're like someone in a house that's on fire, but we haven't run out of that house yet. We're still hoping that everything will be all right, and that this house that's on fire will somehow give us refuge, security, happiness. He said things that are constantly changing don't last. You can't take as permanent refuge. You can't find happiness in them. They're like fire. So after his enlightenment, when he crossed the river, if you ever go to India, Nilanjala River, he went to teach the Kassapa brothers, who were leaders of a sect of fire worshippers. And they're very strict, dedicated meditators, practitioners, but they haven't yet found the path to enlightenment. So the Buddha saw he could help them. So he gave a talk, the fire sermon, pointing out the nature of these khandhas is like something that's on fire, constantly changing, unreliable, even painful to attach to them. Even just seeing things is painful, like fire, it burns us, because we attach. We attach to pleasant sights, and we want them, we're attracted to them, we love them, think about them, become hooked on them. We attach to unpleasant sights. We reject them, are averse to them, don't want them, hate them. So our eyes are constantly burning with love and hate, attraction, aversion. Ears, nose, tongue, touch through the skin, and then the mind itself that remembers all these things. Constantly burning with feelings of pleasure and pain coming about through the sense contact we have. Because the Kassapa brothers, they understood fire well, they were already interested in that description. And suddenly they realized their mistake, because previously they hadn't been looking carefully enough at their own khandhas as the basis of craving and attachment, clinging, ignorance. Now they saw, so them and all their followers became enlightened listening to the Buddha. The Buddha didn't encourage us just to believe things easily. He encouraged us to investigate, look and learn through our experience. Because that's the way he practiced. Ajahn Chah the same. He used to say, when you meditate, you're not looking for anything special, to believe in some theory or to try and find some special state, special place, looking for heaven realms or hell realms, trying to find unusual things or lights or images. When we meditate, we're learning just to see the way things are. But to do that, we have to calm the minds, learn to bring up mindfulness, focus the mind. So we use our meditation objects, Buddha, or the breathing, the in and out breathing, or any of the other meditation techniques we use. We use them to calm the mind, bring up this quality of knowing over and over again, so that we can direct our attention to really look at the way things are, see the way things are. And then we contemplate. Looking is contemplation. Contemplation means looking, clearly seeing the nature of this body. Is it permanent, impermanent? Looking at feeling, experiencing feeling. Is it permanent, impermanent? To keep contemplating like that. So we're developing both mindfulness and wisdom at the same time. And Ajahn Chah, over and over again, he reminded us not to keep thinking of, as we train this mind, that it's sort of two separate things, what we call samatha or vipassana, or calm and insight. The quality of mindfulness and wisdom, they grow together, they support each other. Obviously, as we meditate, we develop more peace, states of peace. But they're not an end in themselves. They're a means to an end. They're supporting the ability of the mind to look and see, develop insight, wisdom. So we constantly have to be reflecting back as we meditate, as we develop calm and peacefulness, then also look back at our own experience. And you see the things that you cling on to are not permanent, they're not self. These all come out of this, or this experience, this knowledge comes out of the one mind. It's not like several minds or several people, there's just this one mind we're training with. So sometimes it sounds a little bit confusing. So we say, well, there's this one mind. Who's looking, who's knowing, who's getting liberated? Well, obviously it's a process of cause and result. We say a conditioning process. You're bringing up mindfulness and then looking back at this body and mind as it is. So you might say it's as if there's a separation taking place. The mind that knows with sati is looking back and it's seeing the way things are. It's seeing, feeling arising, passing away. Memories, thoughts arising, passing away. So these things, the khandhas are there, we're experiencing them, we're looking at them. But then there's also the mind of insight, wisdom, that is letting go of them. We say transcending them, going beyond them. It's the one mind, but it seems to be separating in that sense. So as you meditate, you'll see sometimes you get very peaceful. All the pain disappears. You might see, feeling is very uncertain. You might be sitting with very painful legs or knees, but you keep focusing on your meditation object to the point where it completely loses any awareness of pain. It becomes very light. The feeling is light, peaceful. Then later on you come out of that state, pain reoccurs. These things are impermanent. But the mindfulness you're developing, cultivating, gives you the chance to see that, to know that. You can know, pain is coming, and then it goes. Pleasure comes and it goes. Ajahn Chah said it's like a bottle with oil and water in. So there's the mind that knows with mindfulness, with wisdom. Then there's the thing that's known, say the feeling. They're both there together, but they're not mixing. Like oil and water in a bottle. And you'll see maybe later tonight, practicing, sitting, walking, meditation, you might have that experience where you see feelings are coming and going, but you're not really attaching to them. There's a lightness to the mind. It can know an experience of a feeling, but it doesn't cling on to it. When we don't cling, then the mind doesn't create anything out of it. It doesn't get fixated on it, think a lot about it. It just knows, it's like that. Feeling is like that. Thoughts are just like that. The body is just like that. So nothing special when you're meditating. All you can really hope for is an experience of seeing everything as just like that. But it's an experience where you're not deluded. This is getting closer to what the Buddha was pointing to. It's just like that. Oh, it's just a mood. Oh, it's just a thought. Oh, it's just a feeling. Oh, my body is just like that. We have external experiences. Feels cold, it feels hot, feel tired, feel energetic. There's sounds, there's silence, and so on. But it's just like that. But to get to that point where you can see things as just like that, with a sense of evenness of mind, equanimity, we have to practice mindfulness, maintain the mindfulness. This is where most of us fall down. We maintain mindfulness for a little while, we have some insight, and then we lose it. We let all the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions take over again. We're back to square one. But on an occasion like this, you can keep practicing longer. Put a bit more effort into your meditation. Keep developing this evenness of mind, whatever comes up. You have pain or you have pleasure, whatever mood, you feel good, you feel bad, happy, sad, angry, peaceful. It's all something you can contemplate. And little by little your experience of the Dhamma, seeing the Four Noble Truths, will become clearer to you, and the mind brightens up. It knows, oh, this is what the Buddha was talking about. It's just like this. It's actually going back to where we've been before, in a way. And the Buddha said, you practice this path. He compared it to like going back through the jungle and discovering an old, ancient, lost city. It's been around there for a long time, but totally lost to the world. And now you're rediscovering it. When you get peaceful in meditation, you often have the feeling, oh, it's like coming back somewhere you've been before. And you also think, why did I take so long? Why did I waste so much time with all that other stuff? It seems the most obvious thing in the world when you have mindfulness and insight is clear. The mind is working very well, like a machine that's well lubricated. You don't have to do much, it's obvious. The Dhamma is obvious, the Four Noble Truths are obvious. The problem is when we forget that, we go back to our old way of thinking, our old habits. It's like all the lubrication's gone, or we've lost the way to the ancient city, back caught in the jungle of our own moods and thoughts again. So we have to learn how to do this, clear away all the undergrowth, develop this path, maintain ourselves on the path. And then we're following in the footsteps of the Buddha. So tonight, being Visakha, in a moment we'll do a circumambulation around the hall, just to show our respects to Buddha and Dhamma Sangha, a form of meditation, just quietly walking in the cold air to wake ourselves up. So I'll end the talk here, and then we can recite the special verse once the flowers have been given out.